Alright guys, welcome back to another Omnibus tier ranking. Today I decided to do the Predator and Alien Omnibuses. So I'm really doing this because the Predator show is coming out, movie, which is an animated movie I'm very excited for. I'm not going to be able to see it on the release date because my wife is out of town. I am out of town at the time of this video releasing. I'm probably out of town, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. But why I'm releasing this is mostly for that, but also I absolutely love both these franchises. I grew up with them. Alien 2 is my favorite movie of all time, probably, or at least top 5. And it's just a franchise for Predator and Alien that really resonates with me as a sci-fi monster horror fan. They combine all of those. So we're going to tackle the two Predator original year omnibuses and then Alien omnibuses. Unfortunately, we still do not have the Alien vs Predator omnibus. Marvel, what are you doing? But hopefully we'll get that. I'm assuming they're going to announce that when they start putting out the Marvel Alien and Predator series, which are debatable of what people like and dislike. I actually personally like some of the stories quite a bit from the Marvel era. I know some people don't, but I do. And then there's some stinkers. So, you know, don't worry though. We got some here too. We're going to talk about it. But let's just jump right in. All right, so the first Predator Omnibus is going to handle a lot of miniseries or one-shots, and that's kind of all of these omnibuses. So if you like, I can go through each and every one, or you could just look on Google and see that. But I'm going to talk about the omnibuses themselves, the stories I liked in them, and maybe sometimes talk about the bad ones or just ignore them. But this first Predator Omnibus, I was really, really excited to read it. I have not read this stuff at all growing up. And I really enjoyed it for the most part. It was really good. So it opens up with Predator Concrete Jungle, which is one of the more famous storylines. And it's also the title of a video game that came out years ago. It's also this beautiful thing. Or maybe this wasn't from that. I don't know. I love this shirt. And John Schaefer, that's Dutch's brother, is basically going one-on-one with this Predator, or sometimes Predators. The first story actually reminds me a lot of the Predator 2 movie because of the style and how the Predator's coming along and hunting and everything. But then it definitely dwells way into a bigger, more bombastic war on the streets. And I believe this came before the Predator 2 movie, so it's kind of cool to see that, or they were made around the same time. Very cool idea. Overall, there's a trilogy of these stories with John. The first one is probably the strongest of the bunch. It's definitely over the top. I mean, John, I think at one point just starts fist fighting the Predator, which no fucking way. No way. But at that point, I don't really care because it's just having a lot of fun with the idea of the Predator hunting in New York and in a city. I love that type of setting for the Predator here. So overall, I really like the first story of this. And then the sequels that come in the omnibus as well are pretty good. They get more outlandish, so less believable. And eventually we go to more of the frozen area. I think it's Siberia, and it's definitely a really cool setting, seeing the Predator have to hunt in an ice cold environment. I really like that overall. And John is a fun enough character that I have to say that even the weakest of the stories is still pretty good. It's not great, but it's pretty good. And there's other stories in here to have fun with. I really was laughing the entire time, but there's a storyline where basically the Italian mob versus the Predator. And listen, I'm Italian. It's pretty fucking funny. A lot of stereotypes. But if you want something a little bit more goofy, I thought it was good. It has some really good gore. But really the standout of this omnibus is the last story in it, which is kind of interesting because you usually don't get that. Usually omnibus kind of peter out, unfortunately. But Kindred is probably my favorite story in the entire omnibus. So what it's about is that you have this main character, Buddy, and throughout the first few pages, you see that he's basically slapped around and abused by his father. So right away, you fucking hate the father, right? And I just want to beat the shit out of him as a father. But I really, really enjoyed that part. And then the father, when they're on a hunting trip with the son, gets brutally murdered by a predator. So that kind of sets up the PTSD that he has. But it actually skips years later when he's a grown man. He has his own family. He's living his own life. And then guess what happens? A predator comes back to this small little town. But at the exact same time, some prisoners escape, and so they're coming into town doing terrible things, and the predator's like, I don't like you motherfuckers, you were good hunting, and he goes after them too. So it's really cool. It's a really fun story that involves actual stakes, actual characters. This to me is the best in the entire collection. It's my favorite. It has some of the best kills, and I just really like the fact that it dealt with PTSD in a surprisingly pretty mature way, especially for a Predator story. So yeah, this omnibus to me, you know, I could put it in pretty great because that's probably where it rank, like if I'm ranking omnibus in general. But as a Predator fan, I think this is a must read. I think for Predator fans, this is absolutely a knockout. It's a really fun time to kind of see the Predator hunt again in comic form. And yeah, I'm just going to go with must read on this one for the first omnibus for Predator. All right, so to spice this up, we're now going to talk about the Alien Volume 1 original years, because otherwise I'm going to talk about 2 Predators and then all Alien. That might get boring. So we're going to talk about Volumes 1 and 2 of Alien, then back to Predator Volume 2, and then Aliens Volume 3 and 4. So Alien Volume 1 is very similar in a sense to the Predator Omnibus, where they decide to make direct sequels to the movies they're basing it off of. So for the Predator Omnibus, they based it off of the first one, but then 2 came out pretty quick and they kind of just did their own thing. For Alien, there was a pretty big gap between Aliens 2 and 3. So the omnibus here, the first like 3 stories, really just is a full-on sequel to Alien 2. And guess what? It's better than 3 in a lot of ways. See, the biggest thing is that Hicks and Newt stay alive. So that's something that I absolutely fucking hated in Alien 3. And I think most fans would agree. So with this, you get Hicks and Newt. Now, it's not perfect. There's some cheesy dialogue. It's a product of its time and things like that. But the fact that we get a lot of work delving into Newt and Hicks and just kind of going through what they've been through, their traumatic experience and trying to survive, is absolutely awesome. I love that portion of it. I felt really bad for Newt. We even get an older Newt at some point, and I really just love that type of growth for a character. Seeing Hicks kind of deal with losing himself or getting hurt really badly and trying to rebuild himself is all great. So I would say the first good portion of this omnibus is really good. I was really digging it. I liked the art. It was very atmospheric. Yeah, overall, the first half is really good, or maybe a little less than the half, but all of that's pretty good. But I gotta be honest, I was not really excited to read the next portion, Genocide and Hive, because I thought it was gonna suck. And it didn't. It didn't, at least for me. I personally love these stories. So one story is basically just 2 different or multiple different alien factions fucking destroying and eating each other and dominating it. It's like watching the Discovery Channel when you see the like different ant colonies like eating and fucking murdering each other. That's this, but with friggin' xenomorphs. It's super cool. I love that. The other story is Berserk. I mean, we got a fucking robot dog that's designed like a xenomorph, and he uses the xenomorph dog to infiltrate the aliens. Because, you know, aliens don't really give a fuck about androids and stuff. They just really focus on humans or anything that has organs. You know, they don't give a shit about robots. They just get them out of the way. So anyway, all of this was just berserkly weird. Berserkly, that's not even a fucking word, but anyway, it was weird. It was fun. It was a lot of entertaining moments. So all of that really worked for me. So as much as I liked the sequels or the, you know, the uncanon sequels, these 2 stories absolutely lifted my spirits and made me smile the whole time. So I really enjoyed those stories. And then we get Alien 3, and it's just like a really bad version of Alien 3, but Alien 3 is not a very good movie in my opinion anyway. So this was the worst part of it, and of course we close out with this and like a mini series based on the toy line of Alien, because believe it or not, rated R movies used to sell toys to kids like this, and RoboCop and Predator. Yeah, this was the weakest part of the whole omnibus for me. And of course, as we leave an omnibus, it's a downer. You know, when we get a downer story like that, really fucks with the flow, and it's pretty long too. So that sucks. I really didn't like that last portion of the entire book. So where would I put it then? I'm going to put it in pretty great. I think it's still definitely worth reading. Just be prepared to have a decent size of your book at the end. I think it's like 150, 200 pages or so, maybe 250, that aren't very good. But the rest is pretty damn good or really entertaining. I won't say anything to me in that whole book is as good as Kindred from Predator Volume 1. But there's still some pretty great reading material here and there. Alright, so Aliens Original Years Volume 2 is good, but definitely misses the mark in some places. I think the biggest misfire or fuck up is definitely Space Marines. It's a 10-issue series, and it never felt like it was ending, and none of it was very good. And it's basically the middle portion of the entire book. If you took that out, this might be closer to the original first book. But that story is pretty awful. I have really nothing good to say about that story. It's just boring. Has really, really, really garbage cardboard characters. And none of the kills are good. I mean, if you're going to have shitty kills too in an Alien book, that's a failure. One story I really liked was Alien Salvation in this book. If nothing else, I'd say check out that story. It's by the guy who did Hellboy. And wow, I know the guy who did Hellboy, Mike Mignola. I think I can't say names. You guys know I fucking pronounce like an idiot. But great story. Really good Alien story, and one of my favorite because it has this like moody atmosphere thanks to Mike, and it's definitely probably the strongest in this book. But I also gotta say one other one was closer to the end, or I think it's the last one, is Alien Stronghold. Really, really fun. It also had some really good humor and kind of fucked up. So yeah, overall, where would I put this in terms of where it is? It's got to be good, but has issues, because I don't think it's awful, but I do think that it definitely has some big issues here or there, but it does have a good enough stories on the opening and the ending that the middle cannot take it down completely for me. So the second Predator volume was really high up there for my anticipation because of how much I liked volume 1. I was like, this is going to be great. Or even if it's not as good, it's going to be pretty good, right? And I was wrong. I was let down. This was pretty big disappointment for me. Now, I'm going to say this about this volume. I will say this. If we're talking about art and designs and some good kills, this is pretty fucking fun to flip through. But me, I am a person who loves the story and the characters. And if you ask me to name a single story in here that I can remember characters, it's not happening. The stories in here are pretty much all just really bland. Nothing sticks. And as we get closer to the end of the early years and closer to modern years, we get a lot bigger overarching stories and sequels, and none of them have characters I give a fuck about. So as much as I love some of the designs during this era, and some of the stories displayed some of the coolest fucking kills I've ever seen the Predator do, all of that's great, but it just can't be enough to make me say, yeah, you gotta buy this omnibus. This is a really hard buy for me in terms of go out and pick it up. I'd say, even as a big Predator fan as I am, I would say maybe $40. It's okay at best. It's just, it's visually good, but story is so weak that I can't suggest this is worth reading. And it's not to say that any of these stories are fucking Eisner winners, but there's way stronger stories in especially the first Predator book and even the first Alien book. But this one did not have that same flair, unfortunately. So as much as I dislike putting a Predator book in the okay, it's about as high as I can put it. Okay-ish. Maybe a 2 or 2.5 out of 5 at highest. Alright, and we're on volume 3 of Alien, and fuck, man, I am... You know, I can sell this volume for a good amount of money, and it's only because I fucking love this franchise that I keep these, because I like how they look on my shelf. You can't see them, but they just look beautiful right over there all together, and they're going to look great when more volumes come out with the New Year's and stuff, but, yo, this fucking stinker ass omnibus is not good. It's not to say that every single story in this is bad, because there's some one shots that are pretty good, some unique ones, but this is the 90s, and so the 90s, the more I'm reading of the 90s, not as bad as I remember, but it's also very, very much pretty bad at points. Some of these stories are the like perfect example of why nobody takes the 90s, or has such a bad reputation, I should say, because some of these stories absolutely suck dick, and they're not good. Saying that, it's not the worst thing, maybe. I don't know. I can't. This I can't really recommend to anyone. If you can get this for like $25, maybe. But honestly, I think it's pretty much a throwaway. I think it's a really weak volume. Even comparing it to everything else on this list, everything else on this list is stronger than it by a good margin. There's not a single story in here that's above maybe a 3.5 at highest, but most of them are in the 2, and a couple of them are in the 1s. Yeah, this is not worth really owning. This is a good example of where we put the throwaway comic. So when I picked up volume 4, you know, I had pretty low expectations now, because, well, I didn't really fucking enjoy volume 2 too much, and 3 was woo. So 4 I picked up, and I gotta say, it is a huge improvement over 2, and especially 3. This was the strongest, like, comeback I've seen in a while, and I think it's mostly because we had much stronger writers this time. Brian Wood, who, questionable stuff that he's done aside as a human, has always been a writer I actually really enjoy, and this kind of proves it to me, is that he writes some really captivating characters, and his main story in here, Defiance, is probably one of the strongest Alien comics out there. It's dark, it's seedy, but it also has gripping characters and some great fucking tension, and that's really hard to do in comics. So yeah, overall, that story alone makes this a much stronger volume than everything before it. But not only that, but Dust to Dust, another story I never even heard of, is great. It's fucking good. We also get the original screenplay of the Alien that's kind of redone, kind of changes a few things. That's also really fascinating to read and watch it come to life, because you don't really get to see that often. One more quick thing is Rescue, another shorter story, but another story that I actually really enjoyed overall, and I didn't expect to. It's kind of a very claustrophobic feeling book, and I like that type of stuff. It kind of reminded me of that one horror movie where they go in a tunnel and they're trying to get out. But anyway, overall, this was a much stronger volume. It was very entertaining. I read it in about 3 sittings, and I was like, you know what, I'd read this again. And that's a good feeling. When I say I want to read something again, that means that it did something really well. So I'm gonna have to put this in pretty great, I gotta say. I put it behind the first one. I think the first one had higher highs, but I think actually, to be honest, the fourth one was more consistent. So they're pretty close, but I'm going to put the first one a little higher. And that is my ranking for all the Alien and Predator omnibuses. Now, there's 6 of them right now. If they ever make more, I might do a second part of this. I might reread and redo this, because as much as, you know, some of these might be painful to fucking reread, I love this franchise. I might sacrifice my time and mind and life, but, you know, we'll see. But as far as what to really buy, like a must buy, in my opinion, is definitely the first Alien Omnibus and the first Predator Omnibus. I think both are very strong. And again, you don't really have to read anything beyond that, because they all just tell short stories or a couple of issues, but it's all contained. So it's not like if you don't get volume 2, you're going to miss anything. But those 2 to me are must buys. But if you want something that's a bit entertaining and worth your money and pretty high up there, I'd say grab volume 4 of the Alien Omnibus 2. Also, it's way more modern. A lot of this is 2000 onward, so that might be a big draw to people who don't really like the 80s and 90s writing style and art. Now, as far as Predator Volume 2 and Alien Volume 2, they're like really, really hard sells for me. Again, worth reading if you're a huge fan, and you can get them very cheap, and I'm talking about cheap. Alien 3, listen, if you're a completionist, sure. I'm not going to stop you. I bought fucking Daredevil Shadowland, alright? I'm with you guys. But if you like money, if you like your time, I cannot recommend Alien Omnibus Volume 3, because it's that fucking bad. But yeah, that's my list. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, let me know which omnibuses you liked for the Alien franchise or the Predator franchise. Which stories are your favorite? I do plan to do a thorough, detailed deep dive into every Predator Dark Horse comic, not including Alien vs Predator ones, when the Predator movie comes out, I think in October of this year. So that gives me more time to refresh myself and reread these stories. But I will do that later in the year. But I would love to hear your thoughts on these omnibuses. Where would you rank them? What were your favorites? What were your least favorites? And I hope you liked this video. If you did, hit the like button. If you love it, hit the subscribe button. And I will be back for more omnibus rankings in the future.